are now being streamed. So let me just make sure we are being streamed. That little message doesn't always mean something. Okay, awesome. Good. Welcome, everybody. My name is Angela Fobbs, and I was born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio. And we are the Democrats Abroad Ohio team with members from across the world. We all managed somehow to escape. I'd like to introduce our members of our team. First, I'd like to introduce Karen Lee. She's from Gallion, Mansfield, and Columbus before moving to Greece. Give us a little wave, Karen. No? Okay. And then we have Nikki Vandervelde. She's originally from Xenia. Kenton Barnes, who is originally from Toledo, but he's not here right now. Jeff Simmons, born in Cleveland and grew up in Columbus. Christine Anderson from Chagrin Falls, South Euclid, which is a suburb of Cleveland. Miguel Madrigal from Columbus, and Rebecca Lammers from Columbus. So we're representing the great state of Ohio abroad. Our next event will be on this Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern time and 7 p.m. Central European time. We'll have meet the candidates with our Ohio governor, or not yet Ohio, but our candidates for Ohio governor and attorney general. I wish they would be Ohio governor. And yes, that's what we're all working for. And now, back by popular demand, our Democrats Abroad Vice Chair and Akron native, Art Shinkler. Hi, Art.
Hi, thanks, Angela. Yeah, I just want to say I unfortunately don't vote in Ohio anymore, but I did grow up in Akron. And the one thing I'll say is that when I was a boy, we had a Democratic governor and 2 Democratic senators. And I think we can make Ohio a blue state again if we all pull together, and most importantly, get out and vote. I'm going to probably say this 4 or 5 times, but if you're overseas, go to votefromabroad.org right now and ask for your ballot if you haven't already. And then tell at least 5 friends and family members to do the same, and call your friends and family back in Ohio and make sure they get out and vote. That's how we're going to turn Ohio blue this year. So on behalf of Democrats Abroad, I want to welcome all of you. I particularly want to welcome our candidates for auditor and state treasurer, Auditor Sappington and Mayor Scherzer. I'm going to call you Mayor Schertzer. I'm delighted that we have a candidate for state treasurer. I think somebody wrote somewhere that maybe people don't know what y'all do. I used to be in the municipal bond business, so I know exactly what you do. I think I called on one of your predecessors when I was in the business in Ohio. So it's a very important role. And I think the fact that we've got you guys on today emphasizes that one thing we're pushing this year in this midterm election year is what we call down ballot elections. Traditionally, we have all voted in a federal election, Senate, Congress, President. We're really emphasizing this year that we need to get out and vote for governor, for auditor, for treasurer, for lieutenant governor, for secretary of state, whatever the down ballot offices are. People have got to get out and vote, because we've seen what the Republicans have managed to do and are planning to do in a lot of these offices, especially looking ahead to 2024. We really don't want them running the elections in their states. Because we know what they've already announced what they're going to do. They're going to decide who won the election in their state, and we've got to stop that. And the key to that is voting for all the races in the election, like auditor, like state treasurer. So let's get out and vote. You know, there are probably tens of thousands of Ohio citizens living outside the United States who are eligible to vote. And up to now, only a small minority of them are voting. And that's our job, to reach as many of those people as possible and get the vote, because we know most people overseas are voting Democratic. We've seen that from the statistics. So we're emailing, we're phone banking, we're going to start our digital ad campaign to try to get out all those votes. Each of you who's living, who's listening to this call or watching it, whether it's on recording or whatever, go to votefromabroad.org and ask for your ballot as soon as possible, because you never know what the delivery times will be. Do it now. Is somebody on the Ohio team, is Ohio a state that allows us to email our ballots back? Sorry, I should know. No, you got to mail it. So you got to plan 3 to 6 weeks just to get your ballot back in the post. So I encourage you. And you know, the Republicans say, okay, I'll stop and I will turn it back. Who might turn it back? The Republicans say, okay, I'll stop and I will turn it back. Who might turn it back? To Angela, I think. To Kenton. Is Kenton on yet?
No,
to Angela, I think. To Kenton. Okay, I'll turn it back to Angela. Okay, I got an echo. Okay, I'll turn it back to Angela. Okay, I got an echo.
Kenton isn't on.
Does someone have the Facebook Live running in the background by some chance?
Does someone have the Facebook Live running in the background by some chance?
Okay, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. We'd like to thank you very much, Art. And we'd like to welcome our first candidate. We're excited to have the statewide candidates for auditor and treasurer today. It's kind of funny, actually, that we were talking about the different candidate offices up for election in Ohio this year, and many of us didn't know what the auditor or treasurer actually even was responsible for, or how it affects us living abroad. So you won't believe how exciting the candidates for treasurer and auditor can be, and don't believe us. Let the auditor candidate Taylor Sappington tell us. Taylor Sappington is a 30-year-old openly gay man from Nelsonville, a small southeastern Ohio town, and he's the youngest person for running for state office in Ohio. Despite his youth, Sappington has experience that has as an elected official. After graduating from Ohio University, he was elected to a seat on the Nelsonville City Council. His first legislative accomplishment as a council member was to propose a balanced budget ordinance that mandated balanced budget proposals from the city administration. After serving one term in the city council, Sappington ran for the office of city auditor, which he was subsequently elected. He took office and he began an investigation that uncovered the largest theft and fraud scheme in the city history. As city auditor, he also made the city's finances more transparent, publishing them online for all to see. Under Sappington's leadership, the city coffers are now showing a surplus and the books are regularly audited. It is said that Sappington has created an environment in the auditor's office where one can expect honesty and transparency. In May of this year, Sappington announced his candidacy for state auditor, taking on Republican incumbent Ken Faber. If elected, Sappington hopes to bring his work experience and ethics to Columbus to transform the state auditor's office into an institution to be trusted. Not only is Sappington willing to investigate the first energy scandal involving former House Speaker Larry Householder, something he accuses Faber of not doing, but he also will become a member of the 7-member redistricting commission. Sappington is a man who is committed to balancing the books and taking on the crooks. Love that saying. Taylor, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your plans for Ohio?
Hi there, everybody. Thank you so much for that great introduction. My name is Taylor Sappington. I'm running for state auditor, and I'm really happy and proud to be here. I was running a moment behind, but hopefully nobody noticed, and I just slipped in there right as we were beginning. So if you were waiting on me, thank you for your patience. And then, yes, I'm running for state auditor, indeed, here in Ohio. To balance the books and catch the crooks, a phrase that not only everybody loves, but I have to give some credit to Dennis Willard, who's on this call, for coming up with such an incredible and simple way to describe what the auditor does and how I intend to do it in one sentence. Explaining something like that in such a short sentence is an incredible talent in politics. So before I explain how to balance the books and catch the crooks, I'll talk about myself real briefly. I am 30 years old. You can't see it great, but this hairline right here is in fact just 30 years old. And I'm the youngest person to run for this office ever, as well as the youngest person to run for statewide office, with the exception of Sherrod Brown, who was a couple months younger than me when he ran for Secretary of State the first time. I am really proud to represent rural Ohio. I currently sit in Nelsonville, which is a small town in the Appalachian foothills. And it's very uncommon that a rural person gets on the Democratic ticket statewide, but particularly rare even for the Republican ticket. So really proud that we have a rural person with some representation on the ticket, because those are voters and areas that we have got to get back. As city auditor, I did in fact bust up theft of over $350,000, over $400,000 if you count cash theft. And I did that just 8 weeks on the job after an investigation began on my first day in office due to missing emails and records, particularly payroll records. And so very proud to represent the taxpayer, not just in keeping their money safe, but in court for every single hearing for several years, every single one, and all the way to the last one, and proud to have done the job in that sense. And what I want to talk about real briefly here is how theft and corruption cost all of us. So in Nelsonville, we had incredible deficit. We had $86,000 in the general fund, which is nothing for a city, when on my first day. And theft and corruption had drained the city of its services, its employees, and its treasury. That is what we call a corruption tax. We were cutting because people were taking and running government literally criminally, in prior administrations. So we have the same thing here in Ohio. Ohio has become the most corrupt state in the country, as claimed by the FBI and many others like myself. And we are losing billions of dollars, literally billions of dollars, to things like the First Energy bribery scandal, where just for the luxury of turning on the lights in this room I'm in right now, we're paying First Energy a corruption tax for having the lights on, despite the fact First Energy has absolutely no role in turning these and getting these lights on overhead. So First Energy gets the money for these lights on, and First Energy does nothing to provide for these lights. They simply got that because they bribed politicians to forcibly take money from the taxpayer to give to them and for their bottom line. That's unacceptable to me. That's costing all of us. That's costing us police officers, schools, roads, and everything else, because that is a corruption tax. That's exactly the type of thing I want to take on as state auditor. I believe I am an individual who doesn't owe the establishment. I don't come from state government, and I don't come from a position of a long, storied, established career where I would owe anybody in Columbus favors, which is something we unfortunately have to consider in elections these days. And I'm unafraid to take on these challenges and to take on this crooked criminal class in Columbus. You mentioned the second most important thing about my race, and in some ways, maybe the most important thing, which is redistricting. So the state auditor sits on the redistricting commission. And unfortunately, Ohio's democracy is near broken. And the person I'm running against is the person who broke it. And the reason I say that is because Keith Faber in 2010, 2012 was in the state legislature. And he helped after that 2010 election. He led the way in leadership in the state house, to gerrymandering Ohio to its worst condition in its history after the 2010 election. And then as state auditor, after not taking on these corruption scandals and letting these things unfold on his watch, on the redistricting commission, he then voted in, again, the worst maps in Ohio history, rated by some map makers as the worst maps in the country, and then was struck down multiple times. And so in many ways, I call him the guy who broke Ohio's democracy. He likes to be quiet about it, but he has a central role in breaking what is so important to us here in Ohio, which is representative democracy. So on the redistricting commission, I will be a strong, fervent, and intense advocate for fair maps. I am anti-autocracy and I am pro-democracy. And Democrats should say that more often. We're the only pro-democracy party in this country right now, a major party, and I am pro-democracy. I will fight for democracy in Ohio. Keith Faber and the Republicans will continue to break it until it is gone. So that is and on that point, we just got endorsed by Eric Holder of the National Redistricting Committee, and a very important national group, who has said that my race and Nan's race in particular are key national races, one of a few dozen first endorsements, because democracy is on the line and Ohio is ground zero. In fact, Columbus is ground zero for broken democracy. So those are a few things about my race. I failed to mention a couple things. One is that I started talking about the corruption tax and got off onto state. In Nelsonville, we went from that $86,000 in the bank, and we now have a record surplus and more money in the bank than the city's had in over a decade. Functional, fair, honest, transparent government, putting all finances online like City Hall did, creates surplus, which we can invest in our people and in our communities. I want to do the same for Ohio. And I also failed to mention my working class background. So I come from a hardworking single mom household. We were raised in a trailer on a hillside outside of Nelsonville. It's an important part of who I am. She's my hero, and I failed to mention it, so I want to make sure I get that in there. She lost her job many years ago, and we went through intense struggle where, in fact, we could not even turn the lights on in the trailer in some seasons because of our struggle, and that's an important part of who I am. And I continue to be working class to this day. I say almost at every stop now that my salary is $44,000 a year, and my mother continues to be working class, maybe just on the cusp of middle class to this day. So I don't come from money. I don't come from an established career. I haven't been in politics for 45 years like Mike DeWine, and I'm in fact nowhere close to a millionaire. So those are important things about who I am. And I also just happen to be the first openly gay statewide candidate in Ohio's history, which in some ways is too bad, but I'm really proud to be the first and represent that chair at the table. So I think I didn't time myself, but I feel like I'm rounding the corner to 10 minutes. So that's an introduction to who I am and what I'm doing. This is an important race. The democracy is on the line, not just in the United States, but it's rolling back across the world, depending on where you folks are. Good morning, good afternoon, good night. But in all over the world, democracy is in peril, and not in peril in the way that it's over, but it's in peril in a way that it is not going to exist without us making sure it exists tomorrow. And I impress everyone I talk to at every stop, including this one. I consider this a stop, that if we think we can maintain it by doing nothing, that is not the case. We all are going to have to fight. We're going to have to say things like we are pro-democracy, we are pro-American, patriotic, democratic members, small d and big D, and it's going to take a long time to get us back to a place where we're comfortable with our democratic institutions and values. So I'm excited to be here, excited to take some questions, and that's who I am. Thanks for having me, and I think I'm at 10 minutes, so up to Mayor Schertzer.
It's perfect timing. Perfect.
Perfect. And it's my pleasure to introduce Mayor Schertzer, who I'm going to call Scott because I've just been given permission to. He's our Democratic candidate for state treasurer. He's currently the mayor of Marion, which I think is one of the miracles of the 20th century. How he has maintained 4 times reelected, or 4 reelections in the Ohio 04 area, I think is a small miracle. He's a graduate, hails from Marion. He's a graduate of Toledo, University of Toledo, with a BA in social studies, and worked for initially Secretary of State Sherrod Brown. After that, he worked as a classroom teacher for 13 years, decided to run for city council in Marion, served on the city council for 9 years, and in 2008 ran as mayor, which he's been ever since. He's also the president of the Ohio Municipal League, where he has the opportunity to interface and interact with other Ohio mayors about the challenges that they all face. Scott attributes his time in public office, his success, to having been focused on small town values. And I'm going to let him talk more about that. He believes that Ohio's have suffered from a culture of corruption in Columbus. Oh, yeah. And I'd like to know what you're going to be able to do to help make that difference. So Scott, tell us a bit about yourself, more than I have, and what you see for Ohio. Unmute. You need to unmute.
Boom, how's that? Sorry, the screen changes on me. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Karen. It's good to have a former Central Ohioan introduce me. Marion is not that far away from Gallion. Some of you may or may not know that. So drive through there often on my way to Cleveland and Northeast Ohio as we travel the state of Ohio. Taylor and I often are at the same events. So again, Scott Schertzer, mayor of the city of Marion. I'm in my 15th year as mayor. I like to tell folks for a hot second, 4 years ago, I was Connie Pillage's running mate for lieutenant governor for 30 days until we decided to drop out and support Rich and Betty. It was the right thing to do at the time, but I was just getting warmed up on the campaign trail and starting to have a good time. But my experiences in statewide campaigns goes back 32 years. As was mentioned, I started off with Sherrod Brown when he was Secretary of State. I was his summertime driver in 1990. Unfortunately, Sherrod lost that race, but most of us know that Sherrod has gone on to do bigger and better things representing the hardworking folks of Ohio. So I appreciate that opportunity to work with Sherrod. Finished my degree from the University of Toledo, social studies education major. Thought I was going to be a high school football coach and a history teacher for the rest of my life, but that political bug bit me when I worked for Sherrod. So I immediately came back to Columbus, where I got a job with another Marionite, Mary Ellen Withrow, who is the only person to be the county treasurer, state treasurer, and the 40th United States treasurer. And she is also the treasurer of my campaign and very engaged and very involved in this treasurer's race this year. So I'm proud to have Mary Ellen's influence and activities involved. So having worked in that office, I'm very familiar with the duties and responsibilities of the state treasurer's office. Also, during that time in the early 90s, Mary Ellen gave me the opportunity to kind of branch out a little bit as I did work for her, but she allowed me to be a volunteer and work on John Glenn's reelection campaign in 1992. And that was one of the highlights of my political, I guess, career, because, you know, to me, John Glenn is an American hero, and being able to sit in a room and have him give a firsthand account of his launch into space was just something that I'll never forget. And shortly after I became mayor, he came to Marion with former President Clinton when Hillary was running the first time, and I got to introduce he and President Clinton from the stage here at Marion Harding High School. So that was a powerful moment for me to be involved in that. So I did teach 8th grade American history, as I said, for a total of 11 years, 13 years teaching. I'm married. My wife is also a public school teacher. She teaches elementary music. We have 2 daughters. One is going to be a junior at The Ohio State University. She is at the John Glenn School studying public administration. And then we have a daughter who will be starting a sophomore at Miami of Ohio, currently majoring in political science, but I think she's still thinking about what she wants to do when she graduates. So that may change. So there's 3 questions I get when I'm on the campaign trail. The number one question is, who's the state treasurer now? And I can't tell you how much that pleases me that most people do not even know who our state treasurer is. So it just shows you what kind of work this individual is doing. And I tell folks that I will never mention my opponent's name on the campaign trail and in public. I just ask you, and I ask them when I speak to them, to remember that the person speaking to you right now is Scott Scherzer, and he wants to be your next state treasurer. The second question I often get is, how's the campaign going? And you get that kind of almost pity type of tone in somebody's voice. I will tell you that I am having the absolute time of my life campaigning across the states. It is so enjoyable. It just brings me back to those early 90 campaigns when I had such a great time. So it's incredible to cross the great state of Ohio and meet folks in all different walks of life. And so I'm having a great time. And then the third question is often, what does the state treasurer do? People really do not have a firm understanding of what the state treasurer's duties and responsibilities are. The primary duty and responsibility is the treasurer is the watchdog of the state's investments. But there are a number of other things that the treasurer does. One of the most important things that goes unnoticed is the treasurer has a designated appointment to all 5 of the state pension funds. Now, that is important because nearly 3 million Ohioans rely on those 5 state pension funds for their livelihood, either active members or retired members. And we're talking about folks that are police officers, firefighters, nurses, correction officers, every state worker, county worker, city worker. We're talking about the people in our cities that pick up our trash every week. We're talking about middle-class, hardworking Ohioans. These folks are working longer, they're working harder, they're paying more, and they're getting less. In fact, the healthcare benefits have been taken away from PERS, STRs, and Police and Fire Pension Fund. Retired teachers have not had a cost of living increase in more than 5 years. And you would think with the inflation that we've been dealing with this year, that the powers that be in Capital City down the road would understand that those cost of living increases are very important in the economic climate that Ohio is currently in. So because these folks are working so hard, I think that we need to pay more attention to the designated appointments to those 5 pension boards. I think if you've worked with dignity, you should retire with dignity so you can live with dignity in the state of Ohio. And that will be one of my primary focuses as the next state treasurer, to make sure that those appointments have in line the values of those that are working under and paying into those 5 pension funds. Also, the state treasurer office has some economic duty responsibilities. Marion Withrow, who I will refer to many times because I learned a great deal from her. She started some of the more popular programs that are still in existence today in the treasurer's office. Yes, they've been rebranded over the years, but they are the essence of what she created. She created the linked deposit programs. The linked deposit program, the first one was for small businesses to help keep them afloat, keep them expanding, keep the doors open. You've got ag linked deposit. Most Ohioans don't even recognize that agribusiness is the second largest employment sector in the state of Ohio. I myself put myself through college working at a grain elevator. So I know how important agribusiness is in a community like Marion. Even though I'm the mayor of the city, it is still important to keep those jobs because we have obviously a lot of businesses here in rural Ohio that support the agribusiness industry. Mary Ellen also created the program where states and our governments, local governments, can deposit money safely and securely into different funds that the state treasurer manages. And by the way, the state treasurer manages over $30 billion in an investment portfolio and is responsible for $230 billion. I think I said million, so let me correct that, $1 billion in assets for the state of Ohio. So the role is monumental in making sure that we get the best return on the investments that we can for the taxpayers of the state of Ohio. So all folks really, really want is an opportunity to get ahead in life and do what's best for their families. And that is why I'm running, because I see the struggles that my own hometown has gone through. And we have collaboration and cooperation in my hometown with the likes that I have never seen before. And we have been able to conquer some of the challenges that have been facing the state of Ohio and municipal governments of all corners of our state. And when you have that collaboration and cooperation, you can get those challenges taken care of as we move forward. We had the opioid epidemic. We had the recession of 2008, which was devastating. And then most recently, we have all had to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. And if we worked in silos like we used to here in Marion, like I fear that we often do in the state of Ohio and our government, that's not a productive method of taking care of the issues for the voters of Ohio. So those are just some of the reasons, some background for me. I think we're going to do Q&A here in a moment. So I will thank you once again for Dems Abroad for creating this opportunity for us to introduce ourselves to you.
Scott, thank you. Great. I don't know if I'm stepping into Angela's bailiwick or Nikki's here, but we're about to enter this Q&A session. And I sort of want to loop back to Taylor and ask you the same question that Scott addressed, is like, how has your reception been going on the campaign trail? How's it been for you? And in light of that, to mention that Martha McDivitt Pugh, who was is the chair of our global LGBTQ caucus, was to have asked these questions, but she has a close relative in hospital and can't make it today. So I'm kind of looking at that. What's it been like for you on the campaign trail across the state? Have you heard some other concerns from Ohio voters? And then also to sort of address the laws that have been passed in the General Assembly or signed into law that abrogate rights of all of our citizens, and particularly non-binary community.
Yeah, some good questions there. So let me see if I can't take them in part. So things are going well. We need to go back and make sure our count is up to date, because we just hit several counties, 3 or 4 counties in the last week we had not been to. But the count is over 50 of the 88 counties for sure. We may be creeping up on 55 after last week. So putting in a ton of work, going everywhere. And I absolutely plan and intend to hit all 88 before Election Day. So hopefully you'll see that announcement sometime in late October, or who knows, maybe even just before the election, depending on how long it takes. So we're working really hard. When we get to these events, people are very energized. People are very angry. That isn't a very important emotion to mention. People are very angry, and it's important to validate that, because it's totally reasonable reaction to the insanity and extremism from the Republican Party in many ways right now. And also in some ways to the frustration on progress, and in some ways lack of progress on issues that we all care about. So energized, angry. And when we get in the room, as Mayor Scherzer knows, as Mayor Scherzer does himself, we don't come to these races with 40 years of, or I'll use Mike DeWine's number, 45 years of establishment politics and elected office in a statewide office. And so we're newer names. My name's much newer than Mayor Scherzer, but I don't even think Scott would mind me saying his name. We're just not there like Mike DeWine. We haven't been around and owned by millionaires and billionaires for 45 years. So it's different for us. And so when we get in the room, we can make that introduction, we can frame the issues, and folks really appreciate. I apparently am not moving enough. My lights turned off. Sorry about that. Maybe First Energy heard me talking bad about them. No, just kidding. So folks really appreciate what we bring to the table, the uniqueness of the ticket, the working class nature of the ticket, and they get really excited. So our best asset truly is getting in the room and talking with those folks, and the energy and anger of voters. So to me, I think that's going well. It's going far. The situation is far more competitive and intense than it was 8 months ago when I got in the race. And you could not ask, and I mean this, you could not ask for a better top of ticket than Tim Ryan and Nan Whaley, who Scott and I's campaigns in many ways, we control what we can control, and then part of the race is out of our control. And so the out of the control part is Tim and Nan, and they're fantastic. And I don't mind saying today that Tim Ryan, I actually told a reporter this from out of state last week. that Tim Ryan's running the best campaign in Ohio history, either party. And they were shocked to hear that. They couldn't believe that. They said, we have not heard that before. And I said, well, come to Ohio because he's running the best campaign in Ohio's history. So that's all good. Some of the issues I'm hearing about on the trail, I don't mind saying that I hear in the news every day about inflation. And in fact, inflation impacts my budget as somebody who's below the average income in Ohio of around 55,000. Inflation's impacting everybody, but I have actually never heard a voter mention inflation on the trail. Could be the nature of my race, but I don't hear on the trail what people are saying in the media. Not one single voter, and I mean that. Some of the other things I'm hearing, though, is people are really tired of the criminality. They're tired of the sleaze. They're tired of the crooked nature of Columbus, and they're tired of being tired. So they've been like either it's apathetic or cynicism, but of some mix of the two. They feel that they felt it for so long. They're sick of it. They're like, okay, at what point does this all stop? At what point does it get better? And I think that's where some of the frustration and anger comes from. And then I hear about top issue I hear about on the trail is redistricting. So my race, of course, has an important role in redistricting as a member of the redistricting commission. People are very angry in a way that they weren't in 2010, even though 2010 was just as egregious. People were less engaged on this map making issue. But maps and democracy are the two top things I hear about everywhere. It's what people clap about when I start mentioning. It's what people say to me face to face. It's what people post on social media. People want a fair, honest Ohio. And so that's what I'm hearing. And then I'll quickly say, there are some, to answer your last question, I have not run into any personal problems being an openly gay man running. I don't think that's the truth for all openly LGBTQ candidates in Ohio, which is unfortunate. But it's the legislature we've got to be worried about. Incredible extremism coming from things like House Bill 616, the Don't Say Gay bill, and some other items like the heinous genital inspection bill that Ohio came up with. But there are things, there are things like the Fairness Act and other items in the legislature too. So, there's good and bad. There's definitely threats. There's no doubt in my mind that if Supreme Court strikes down gay marriage, that Ohio will act on it to ban it again. In fact, we have what is essentially a trigger law. So if it's struck down, it's still codified in Ohio. It will be banned immediately. And these are the things we're fighting for. We've got to win Scott's race. We've got to win my race, Nan's race, and then move forward with better legislation in the state house and remove some of these extremists, quite frankly. So I think that answered. I think there were like 3 questions there. Did I get all 3?
I can't find the unmute button. Yes, I think you did. I want to pass it along to Miguel. Is Miguel ready with a question about youth or?
Let me just interject here for 1 second.
Okay.
If anyone in the audience has a question for either one of our candidates, if you could please just type * hand up into the chat, and we'll call you when it's your time to speak. So please, Miguel, go ahead.
Can you see me? Hello? Oops. It's the other way. Where? Oh, switch camera. Okay. I might be young. Oh, whoops. Okay, well, I might be young, but I still know how to use technology. So don't worry. Here I am. Hello, welcome. I'm coming to you all the way from Costa Rica, proudly born in the Ohio State University Hospital. Go Buckeyes. I am 27 years old. I'm a law school student at Universidad Costa Rica, proud Buckeye, and I have a question for Taylor Sappington. So, Mr. Sappington, or Taylor, I'll call you Taylor, okay? When you become our next state auditor, how will you, as a young person, how will you make sure living conditions are better for all young people in Ohio? Go ahead.
Really good question. So in many ways, I think my opponent would pass this off, say it's too indirect. I can't do anything. I'm the auditor. I just look at the books. And none of that's true. In fact, heads up for anybody who's ever going to vote in the future for a fiscal officer or auditor's race, if they sound like they're calling themselves a glorified book checker or check writer, they're lying to you. They just don't want to answer the question. So to more directly answer your question, one thing is, I think it's going to be important for young people to see young people in leadership. And though I may not have the hair of a typical young person, I have the energy and spirit and birth certificate to back it up. So I think it's important for people to see young people stepping up. Young people deserve leadership. And quite frankly, we have a duty. We have a responsibility. It's not just an opportunity, it's a responsibility. And so having that chair at the table in statewide office, having the youngest or tied for youngest elected statewide officer after a term of long-time millionaire, multimillionaire establishment, in many ways crooked statewide officers is going to be important. And I think it will help. And I will do everything in my power to help lift up other young people running for other offices. And people should be running of all ages. So that's first. Second, I will be happy to advocate and will in fact intensely advocate in any way possible to Republicans or Democrats on the state legislature on legislation. All of the statewide executive offices do it. It's why so often they come from the legislature before they run for these offices. And so it's an important aspect of it. And it's something I'll happily do and will take on. And then, not to sound like a broken record, but again, it is truly the most important part of my race. I'm going to fight for honest maps where people of common sense, of good qualification, and willing to represent everyone, not just the extremist fringe right, can win office, or excuse me, run for office, win office, and then maintain office, fighting for good policy. I can't stress enough how the extremism in Ohio is sourced, and in many states and countries. Now, if you look at places like Hungary, extremism is sourced in what we call in America, right, gerrymandering, which is just a fancy antique term for autocracy and map making. So that is an important role I'll have. It impacts all issues, including issues that young people care about. And I'm really excited to take on that aspect of the job. And if I didn't say clearly earlier, you might be saying, why is map making important when we have maps till the next census? Under the new under the constitutional amendment that the voters have passed here in Ohio, these maps have been ruled unconstitutional, 5 times? And let me rephrase that. Let's say every time, because that's accurate. They've been ruled unconstitutional every time. And under the amendment, that means we will go back to map making before 2024. So in fact, we'll be redoing maps in Ohio with the state auditor, the governor, so on and so forth. So it's important now, not 8 years from now.
Great. I'm going to pull us back into the state of the state and your opponent's websites. And I want to ask Scott, without mentioning the name of that other person who currently holds the office, he's got 3 things up on his official website, 3 programs that he claims as a success. There's the Results Ohio, which I'm really not sure what it does. There's this Family Forward program that looks like it's probably aimed to compensate for the unwanted births that will happen after the total abortion ban, but I could be wrong. And then there's this stable account program to help disabled Ohioans build savings accounts. Like they can't build savings accounts now? Is there some reason they need a special program for that? How do you judge these 3 programs? Are they successful or are they window dressing?
Well, let's be honest, when you're the incumbent, you have the ability to create politically motivated programs. I'm not going to disparage any of these 3 programs. if there's a program out there, the Family Forward program that assists families when it comes to adoptions, that's never a bad thing. I would just question, why is it being run from the state treasurer's office? That's not really part of the constitutional duties of the state treasurer. The stable program, very similar in helping out families who have developmentally disabled children in their households, and it helps them defray some of the costs and allows them to put that money aside pre-taxed that they can spend for their children's needs. Results Ohio, I'm kind of with you. I'm not real sure, to be honest with you. But as the next state treasurer, I think all these programs need to be evaluated. You know, Mary Ellen Withrow started a college tuition plus program when she was the state treasurer in the late 80s. That program has been retooled and revamped and has been taken away from the state treasurer, and now the state of Ohio runs it. So maybe some of these programs can be rolled out of the state treasurer's office into other state agencies that are more, you know, I guess they're in a situation where they should be running those programs. The programs that have been institutionalized in the state treasurer's office are the Star Ohio program that I mentioned, where local governments can invest their dollars safely and securely in the Star Ohio program, the AgLink, the Link Deposit programs, some of those programs. I'm even going to go out on a limb here and say that there is maybe one thing that the previous state treasurer did, other than try and become our next U.S. Senator twice and lose. But one thing he did was the Ohio checkbook. The Ohio checkbook does bring accountability to our governments, from the state government all the way down to local governments. But the problem with the Ohio checkbook is most local governments don't participate in it. So I would encourage to participate in the Ohio checkbook, that we create an incentive program. And, you know, Governor Kasich cut local governments funding that we get from the state by 50%. For example, the city of Marion, the city of Nelsonville, we have not recovered from that 50% cut. They did restore some of it, thankfully, but not all of it. And so in order to get local governments to participate in the Ohio checkbook, I think that we ought to give that incentive of restoring those local government funds to the municipalities, the townships, the school boards, et cetera, the counties that participate in the Ohio checkbook. So all those need to be reevaluated. I would really like Auditor Sappington, when he becomes the state auditor, to assist in a full-blown audit of all these programs to determine whether they are programs that should be continued or not. But there are some good programs out there created by former treasurers that I think needs to be continued.
Great. I'm going to call Taylor back here for just a minute. You just were given your marching orders there on auditing all these state programs. You're a little bit busy. I want to ask a quick one, because this caught me. Your unnamed opponent says on his website that he does performance audits because these are more efficient than a fiscal audit. And yet I think both types are required. What's he talking about? Why does he only do the one? Because he doesn't have to look at the numbers if he doesn't do a fiscal audit, or what is that?
So this is a great question. So what Mr. Faber is talking about, the difference between the two, just for making sure we're all on the same page, right? So performance audit's going to make sure it's going to check a bunch of things, how the procedures and policies look. So what are the procedures and policies first? Are they actually functioning the way they're written and supposed to function and the way leadership intended? And then what are the metrics? So think about things like schools. Performance audit might say, this is what they intended to do. This is how it actually happened. And this was the impact. And this is how we score that impact on that program. Performance audits are an important part of making sure our money goes where it's supposed to, making sure our money is actually functioning when it goes there. And the state auditor is in a perfect position to pull them off pretty much all over the state. The problem is, and then a financial audit is usually just a routine audit. Here's where the money came from, here's where it went. And as far as we can tell, it was generally fair, honest, and accountable to some margin of error. And those are more routine. every city, village, county, and everybody else has to get those done on some schedule, usually every year or every 2 years. So the state auditor's office, the performance audit is usually a lot more intense and labor intensive. They're harder. And the problem is that my opponent uses them for political purposes, much like Mayor Scherzer was sort of alluding to on some other programs. So I brought up schools for a reason. So imagine you are an anti-teacher union politician. You're conservative and against public education. Maybe even your kids go to private school. And you receive money from groups that want to privatize education. And you've worked your entire career to bust up public education, and you don't believe in public education. Once you become state auditor, you might have some incentive, and you might even actually personally believe that performance audits should show how public education doesn't work. And so the reason I take you through that thought exercise is because in many ways, Keith Faber has been called out for hit most of his performance audits about busting up teachers unions and causing problems for public education. So he's weaponized them while he's tweeting about weaponizing federal law enforcement for political reasons. He's weaponized something as mundane as performance audits. So performance audits shouldn't be used for this purpose, and they should be done for the betterment of Ohio, and they should be honest, right? That's not what he's doing. I might add that there are such things called special audits, which are special investigations. We have a special audit here in Nelsonville because of our theft that we busted up. And the state auditor used to release between 20 and 40 special audits. They used to be looking all over the state, scouring the state for problems and theft and corruption, and releasing 20 to 40 of these a year. Keith Faber in his first year in office released none. 0, and then since then has released what I believe is less than 20. I believe it's less than 15, but I don't have the number in front of me. So worse than that, here in 2022, Keith Faber's office has released 0 again, goose egg. And the only one slated for release is the Nelsonville special audit that I brought to his office. And I'm really looking forward to when he releases that, because I can't wait to talk about it. And my campaign manager just reminded me he's only released 9 since he's been auditor. Auditors used to release 20 to 30 a year. He has none this year, and the one slated for release is the one I brought him. So he's not doing the job. Fiscal, special, or performance audit. He just wants a second term, and he wants to find out a way how to be senator or governor afterwards. So I think that answers the question. Hopefully it does. I took a little bit of a roundabout way there, but these are important. That's an important question. It's in the weeds on the job, and I appreciate the chance to get in the weeds.
All right. Our next question is from an audience member, and Christina Sovskard. Christina, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, I'm Christina Skovskard. I live in Oslo, Norway. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. And I just have a kind of a selfish, I'm the chair here in Norway of Democrats Abroad, and I have a selfish question. It's about this illuminating company. I certainly can believe they're corrupt, because one time I have an apartment still in Cleveland, Ohio, and I kept getting these ridiculous bills. This was some years ago, and I wasn't in my apartment. So I called them, and they said, "Oh, well, you have your refrigerator plugged in." And I thought, well, I can't be spending $200 because I have a refrigerator plugged in. That's insane. I never got any way with them, so I just gave up on it. But now I've gotten a notification that there's a class action against the Cleveland Electric Illuminating Company. What is that about? Do you guys know what that is? This class action? It's First Energy.
Let me try and take a crack at it. The Cleveland Illuminating Company is a municipally run electric company for Cleveland. So that would really.
This is connected to that First Energy.
Okay.
As it says, this class action is Smith versus First Energy Corp.
Coming from Central Ohio, I am not familiar with the Cleveland Illuminating.
Never mind.
Sorry.
I thought maybe this was part of what you were talking about. It's
Don't
obviously
think-
not, but it's kind
I
of,
don't think-
It's not something I've heard of either. I'll just say.
oh, okay. So I'm in a class action suit that I haven't even signed up for. All right. It's kind of weird. Well, good job. It was very interesting to hear some of the things that you're doing. And it's really great that Ohioans have the opportunity to vote down ballot.
So I would also recommend that you ask Jeff Crossman. I think you got Jeff coming on in a couple of days. He's the candidate for Attorney General. He's also a state representative from Parma. So because, as you well know, and most people on here know, Parma is, it's the 7th largest city in Ohio, but it's right there by Cleveland. So he may be more familiar with that than what we are in the
Yeah.
regions that.
Yeah, I
Taylor-
don't want to use people's more of your time for this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
So our next question is from Jeff Simmons. Jeff, do you want to ask your question?
The next question is on the same subject. It's on a lot of people's minds, on the subject of corruption, and which I think shows how important that is in this election. And we've looked at this, and just some questions going into detail, which I'd like to direct to Mayor Scherzer. It has to do with the fact that in the past 5 years, we've had 2 speakers of the House forced out because of the biggest bribery scandals in the history of Ohio. So we wanted to ask, how does the Treasurer's office interface with state regulators, school boards, county commissioners, looking at the net effects of those policies and the net state of affairs on buildings and facilities? What kind of interventions could prevent situations such as we've had for First Energy in the future? And how would you go about rooting out other suspicious transactions in the state to get to other corruption scandals that may be lying in the radar? And where do we go from there?
So the state treasurer deals more specifically with county treasurers when it comes to locally elected officials. There's a good relationship. They offer some training classes and some opportunities for state treasurers, especially newly elected treasurers. I know when I was the president of the Ohio Municipal League in 2018, I always encouraged newly elected mayors, councilmen, auditors, city treasurers, city council members to participate in those classes. And that's much like what the treasurer, state treasurer does with the county treasurer. That's primarily the way the treasurer interacts with local elected officials. I don't mean to pitch the ball over to Taylor, but because of the auditing duties and responsibilities of the state auditor, that is crucial into rooting out some of the corruption that we see in Capital City. And I try and refrain from calling it Columbus, because then Columbus, Ohio as a city gets a bad rap for what the Republicans are doing down there. So you'll hear me refer to it as Capital City. Look, the state treasurer's office is arguably one of the least political offices of all the state offices, including the state legislature. And that it should be that way when we're dealing with taxpayer dollars and investing it and getting the best returns that we can. I think we in the state treasurer's office, we need to take a hard and close look at the incentives that the hedge funds get, because when they talk about the great rates of return, that's pre the incentives taken out. And we're talking millions and millions of dollars that go out to these hedge fund managers and the incentives that they get. Those all need to be renegotiated, because those are our tax dollars and they should be benefiting us, not some hedge fund on Wall Street and propping up them, because that is a conduit for corruption that we need to keep an eye on.
Okay, that sounded like maybe Taylor Sappington. Would you like to weigh in on that subject as well?
Yeah, so I'll say a couple things. One is that seeing as Scott as all of our next state treasurer, there was one question there at the end you asked that I want to make sure I say is important for Scott and I's role in a combined way. But seeing as Scott will be all of our next state treasurer, when he is processing and his office is processing all of the state's transactions in a new way and in a new culture that he'll bring to the office, he's going to have his office, he's going to have himself referring anything over to the auditor's office in a right away if it's suspicious, in a way that both of us absolutely doubt is happening now. And it's more than doubt in our practical, real lived experience. It's not happening now, right? So you said, how are we going to protect transactions? One is we're going to have different people with different cultures, with different expectations, doing the job they're supposed to be doing, right? So that's one important answer. One of the things that I'm most excited to do as auditor is I want to convene a public corruption task force. And the title is actually not important to me. So if you hear me call it like a couple things on accident, that's because we're sort of like wordsmithing with the title. But what it is practically is 10 to 20 people at the state auditor's office out of hundreds who work there, who will be dedicated to just seeking out problematic patterns that show bad leadership, corrupt leadership, and corrupt transactions. That includes the state legislature. I can't impress enough upon everybody here how terrified Keith Faber is to hold his friends accountable in power, including Mike DeWine, John Husted, sorry, his name was failing me there, John Husted and his friends in the legislature. He is terrified of getting in the dispatch looking like he stood up to his friends. I cannot impress upon folks how important it is that the auditor has a role, even if they're elected leaders, has a role in saying something smells wrong here, something is going wrong here, and you're either stealing or wasting taxpayers' dollars, and I want to find out which one it is and fix it. The Public Corruption Task Force will be dedicated to finding people in practices and contracts and transactions just like that. Mayor Schertzer mentioned the most important word that this process takes on, which is silos. We've got 800 people working for the state auditor's office. And one of the most common things in any organization, government or private, is the process of siloing. You get in your position, you perform your task, you go home. You get in your position, you perform your task, you go home. Nobody's going to ever fault you for it, and you shouldn't lose your job for doing so. But somebody's got to be responsible for saying, let's look at the big picture and let's see what's going wrong all over, not just in our silo. And that's what I want this task force to do. So besides bringing a new culture, besides bringing new people and new leadership that Mayor Scherzer and I both will bring, alongside of people like Nan Whaley and Jeff Crossman, I absolutely want to beat the siloing of state government and beat the extremism and corruption through a public corruption task force.
Can I just add on to that? I'm sorry. I think we've all learned about how government is supposed to work. We're all familiar with the checks and balances of the three branches of government. When one party rules and has ruled pretty much for the last 30 years, we're not getting the checks and balances that we all learned in Civics 101, either our senior year or sometime in high school. So an additional check and balance is the political, the other side of the political aisle. That's why we need Democrats in state office to continue a true check and balance that just does not exist today. What we see is we see the gross hypocrisy taking place, and we see them covering for one another. As things kind of drip out about the scandal, the Householder scandal, the First Energy scandal, we're finding out now that Householder probably played a much more significant role in that than anybody had ever realized. And if Householder had something to do with it, we all know that the governor was well aware of what was going on. And even if he wasn't, let's just go out on a limb and say he wasn't, I will guarantee you that every Republican in state office benefited financially in their campaigns through that Householder scandal and that $60 million bribe.
All right. Well, those are some very good reasons to vote all the way down the ballot for Democrats. Okay, so we want to get to the closing part here because we're just a little bit over our time, just a little bit past 4 o'clock, but we started a little bit past 3 o'clock, so I think that's okay. So to finish out, you just want to say some things on behalf of Democrats abroad. You may have been watching the chat and see that we have a lot of links going up, the chat room over on Zoom. And you might want to save that. There's some information there about Democrats abroad, which you can join. We're a volunteer organization, so every warm body that has some time and energy to commit helps us out. We're also very grateful for donations. We have the link there to votefromabroad.org, where you can get your absentee ballot. And also the Ohioans Abroad Facebook group, and we'd love to welcome you to join our group. So don't forget to request your absentee ballot and get it back on time with November. Ohio ballots have to be returned by postal mail or courier service. And especially vote for Democrats all the way up and down the ballot so that we can get our 2 candidates elected and we can make this all real. All right, thank you very much, especially to Mayor Scott Scherzer and Taylor Sappington, and best of luck in November.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for